My name is Marcia Robinson, and we are recording an oral history with Dr. Mel Cohen as part of the MUMories Oral History Project. This project marks the 50th anniversary of the Miami University of Middletown, Ohio. This interview is taking place on November 11, 2016 at the Gardner Harvey Library. Dr. Cohen, do I have your consent to proceed with the interview?
Yes, you do.
Thank you. So, what was it like to be part of the faculty here at Miami Middletown?
What I'd like to do is talk about being part of the faculty, but the idea of opportunities. Okay. I think that's what was most significant for me. And when you think of opportunities, they go in many directions. First, it was an opportunity for me. It was an opportunity to do what I wanted to do, what I enjoyed doing, and I got paid to do it. And I think that's something that may inevitably be privileged. I was privileged and able to do what I wanted to do and to get paid for doing it. And I think we're all privileged who work here in some way. And I thought of that almost every day. There were days that were down, but I thought about that. And the opportunities, more specific, would be opportunities to learn from students, opportunities to take a step back and think about things that are happening in the world and to engage people with those things, opportunities to grow, to speak more slowly than when I came, to be less aggressive than when I came, to take a step back and listen more carefully than when I came, and really try to hear what students are saying. And when I say, opportunities to learn from students, there are many things that I learned. I would bring speakers to class, and we can talk about those at some time. But one was a libertarian speaker who was talking about freedom to drink, have alcohol and whatever, and then you pay the consequences or something doesn't work. And after the class, I remember this, one of the students came up and she said, so-and-so in this class? And I said, yes. She just got out of prison for motor vehicle homicide. And so what that taught me is that you don't know who's in the room. You have to really be conscious of what's being said and reflect. And whether the issue's abortion, there's someone in the class who's been impacted. If it's gun control, there's someone in the class who's been impacted. And so keeping that in mind as I taught and remembering that, it helped sort of guide me in what I would say, and I would make suggestions to the speakers who would come to class as well. And I had speakers come to class who were a variety of perspectives. I've had communists, I've had libertarians, I've had people from Citizens for Community Values, I've had people who've denied the Holocaust. I have a number of different people come to class, not necessarily people I agree with, but I think those were opportunities I was trying to provide students. Hearing ideas that were not their own, but also dealing with ideas that were not their own. And so I was never an advocate for a particular set of ideas. Okay? I was an advocate for thinking about someone seriously and not rejecting them out of hand, basically. And so over the years, I would have these speakers, and those are opportunities for students in class. There are opportunities for students outside of class as well. I took students to the Islamic Center. And we visited the Islamic Center before 9/11. This was not a response to 9/11. It was simply something that I thought was important to learn about the world, basically. We visited the Freedom Center. Okay? We visited the Center for Holocaust Humanity Education. So we've visited a number of different sites that people may not feel comfortable about. Okay? And whenever I would come back from the Islamic Center, I'd say to the students, well, you didn't ask your questions. And they would inevitably say, well, we were too nervous. We didn't know what to say. We didn't know. And you thought you prepared them, you thought they were prepared, but then it taught me again just how, because I feel comfortable, and I've been to the Islamic Center at least 20, 25 times, this is their first time. And I have to remember that it's their first time, basically. So that was an opportunity for me to learn, but also an opportunity for them to learn at the same time. So I think the idea of opportunities become important, and sometimes you just never know. So one time in class, I would pass out, when students would turn papers in, after I grade them, I pass the papers back, and there's no name on the paper. And then I would pick a paper that was really a good paper and read it to class, or have the class read it. Okay, and then I did this, and then later the student came up to me. He said, "You read my paper." That was a very big deal for me. And that student became a local pastor, and to this day doesn't forget that his paper was chosen. I thought, well, I'm just choosing a paper. But you're not just choosing a paper, you're choosing a person, and they, sometimes just don't know that what they wrote was really, really good. And so an opportunity to reach people who may have tremendous talent, but don't necessarily see it. I received an email probably a few months ago from a student I had many years ago who came from a farm. Okay, and very good student, and now he has a PhD from Tufts. And he writes, and he was one of those people you said, you have some talent. Okay, you have some talent. And those are the opportunities to support people that I really value very, very much. So, you have opportunities.
Frequently we've heard that your class and your work were an opportunity to expand horizons. You've talked about the local diversity, but can you talk about life beyond Hamilton and Butler County, how you've helped students find those places?
Well, we find them in a variety of ways. For one, I mentioned we visit locally, okay? Also, I bring speakers into class, and I'd bring people into class who would say, yes, I'm an undocumented person. And they would speak to the class about what it's like to be undocumented, okay? And so I try to get people who have experiences. Outside of this particular area, going to New York with Model United Nations is something that I consider it one of the best learning opportunities on campus for a number of reasons. One, and this gets people out of this area, they learn about the United Nations, of course, as students, but it's just a small part, actually. They learn about another country as well. And they learn about particular issues the country's facing, whether women's rights or trade or nuclear proliferation. But then we go to New York and do Model UN. And they learn about themselves, about when you walk into a room with 150, 200 people you've never met, what do you do? And how do you interact? How do you engage, basically? And many of these people are from different countries, may not speak English very well, or they may be from different parts of our country, so dealing with different kinds of people, okay, at the UN itself. Also, being able to learn about self-control. In other words, there's a lot of temptation in New York. And it's a lot of things you could be doing rather than sitting inside at a meeting, basically. So dealing with that temptation, having the discipline to follow through on something is something that becomes really important. And also learning to deal with New York, where people may talk differently or walk differently, where it's a subculture all its own, and learning how to deal with that. And when someone says, hey honey, what do you want? They're not being abrupt and mean, they're just being New York. And you respond to that, basically, is what you do. And so, and we have interesting stories about this. I remember once we were standing for the bus, all of us in the bus in New York, like 6 or 8 of us, waiting for the bus. And the bus stopped, and we said where we're going. Okay, the driver opened. We said where we're going. And the driver said, no, no, you shouldn't be here. You should be down there to catch the express. Hop on, I'll take you. Hop on, I'll take you, okay? And that's what we did. We hopped on the bus, we went, got off, and we thanked the driver, okay? Now, the driver was an African-American woman. This is probably the first time many of these students had direct contact with someone, an African-American woman, and just did what they were told. And those kinds of things are very special, okay? I could talk about taking students to the Gambia, West Africa. The Gambia. The Gambia is a small West African country, and never in my life did I ever imagine I would be going to the Gambia. Never in my life would I imagine I would be going to the Gambia 15 times. Never in my life would I imagine that I would pick up a phone, call the Gambia, and on the other end, when they hear my voice, they go, hi Mel, how are you? And I'm sitting there, this guy from Omaha, Nebraska, speaking with people in the Gambia. So how did it all start, basically? How did it all start? I was part of MidFest. I'm part of MidFest, and a festival that highlights a different part of the world every year. And one year, I think it was 1995 maybe, we looked at the Gambia and looked at the Gambia and Senegal. Might correct me on the year. Okay. 1999 we were going to do South Africa, and I got a Hampton grant, go to South Africa for a seminar to learn about South Africa for 2 weeks. When I got the money, people said, is there any place else you want to go in Africa? And I said, the Gambia. So I went to the Gambia with the idea of looking for a connection between us and the Gambia. We'd already had arranged for 2 Gambian students to take courses here, but I thought it's expensive bringing Gambians over. Perhaps we could do some teaching there. Okay. And I went by myself, guest of the Gambian government, and was looking for, I thought business would be the best idea. We'll do business stuff, you know, accounting, marketing, and whatever. And when I got there, I saw, no, maybe it's not business. I visited a number of health facilities, and I thought, it's health. So I came back and talked to Marilyn Cunningham in the nursing department. I said, Marilyn, let's go out and have, you know, lunch or something. I said, Marilyn, you're going to the Gambia. She goes, what are you talking about? She had already been to Sierra Leone. She knew something, okay. So the following year, Marilyn and I have colleagues at Xavier Nursing. We went to the Gambia and did a health tour. Some of the same place I visited, but a little more extensive. We came back and decided with Marilyn and my colleagues from Xavier to develop a course called Healthcare and Nursing in the Gambia. And that next year we went. We had some financial support from this campus. Those were the days where you could walk into the executive director's office and say, I have students who are going abroad, can you help me? And you can get $500 a student. Okay, those are the kinds of relations that were there. You could walk in and get them. So I got money. We only had 4 students, but from the nursing department, and we went. Okay, and that was the first year. And it's happened at least 9 other times after that. We expanded beyond nursing to speech pathology, nutrition. We took a pre-dental student as well, and these from the Oxford campus, the Middletown campus, Hamilton, and Xavier University. And there was always co-taught from someone from a nursing department, either here or at Xavier, or 1 year we had UC basically, worked with UC 1 year. And so this is the course. We'd go to the Gambia for 3 weeks, where the students thought they're going on a mission of mercy to help people, okay? And that's the way we are. We're gonna help people. And I sort of said, it's okay, if you want to raise money for your trip, tell people you're going to help. You can raise money, whatever. But when we're there, it's about learning, basically. We're going to learn. And that's what happened. In the Gambia, we visited health facilities. They worked in facilities for about a week. We visited UNICEF, the WHO. We met with the US ambassador in most cases. We went to the Medical Research Council, which is research, first world research in the Gambia. And so they got to learn about another country in a sort of focused way. And the health, I like the health focus, even though it wasn't my area. I like the health focus. It was a window. And I don't care what the window is. You use that window to see other things. You see poverty, you see culture, you see religion, you see all kinds of things, okay? And one thing that they experience differently, and sometimes we talked about it, but only when we got back, is the whole issue of race. I just talked about how the students going to New York saw, a woman driving a bus and responded, okay? Well, the students also they were going to a football match or to a concert, and we have pictures of them with these large black men with their arms around our white students, comfortable as anything. And this is something they've probably never experienced in their whole lives, basically. And those are the types of things. You see the world differently. I see the world differently, okay? I see the world differently. And I'll tell you a story. Okay. During our trip to the Gambia, we were visited the Medical Research Council. And this is British, and it does research and has a clinic, okay? And I became connected with one of the pediatricians who wanted to come to the United States just to visit Children's Hospital, whatever. So I wrote a letter, okay, and he came to the States and stayed with us for a couple weeks, and we got to show him around, okay? And I'll never forget when he arrived and when he left. At the airport, when he arrived, I was waiting right there by security, and they were ready to ask him more questions. And I said, he's with me. And when he left, going through TSA, they made him open and empty his bag. Here's a pediatrician, Nigerian pediatrician, teaching at the university in Nigeria. Well, I almost lost it at TSA and spoke to the supervisors. This is not a way to treat a guest. And I could almost imagine what happens to other people after seeing what I saw with my Nigerian guest, okay? It was an opportunity to have him here. It was also an opportunity to learn and to see things that I didn't believe, well, I thought could happen, but I saw them happening. Okay.
Your mission to broaden horizons for people does not know the limits of the Middletown campus. You mentioned MidFest. Mm-hmm. One of the visions from the original committee planning this university was that the university would help to educate the entire city of Middletown. Could you speak to the MidFest tradition and how the connection between Miami and the community fulfills that original vision?
Okay. MidFest, you asked me about MidFest and the nature of MidFest and how it connects with the mission of the campus, basically. MidFest is we hate to use, when I say we, I'm part of it on the board, but it's a festival, but it's not a bunch of people drinking beer and just listening to music. It's educational. And it's to educate people about another part of the world. Every year, MidFest would highlight a different country in the world and bring people from that country here, in addition to some local people. And I was part of I did the history exhibit. Even though I'm political, so I did the history exhibit because I'm the closest they came to a historian. And in doing that history exhibit, would involve other faculty and involve students and student skills, artistic skills in particular, because I don't have artistic, but their artistic skills were very, very helpful. Also, working on the days of the exhibit, having students come to encourage people to attend an exhibit. So when we did Chile, for example, okay, we had signs, walking on signs saying, free to political prisoners and these types of things. And so one of the students went on the mall downtown and was walking the sign, and the police came up to her. The police came up to her and told her she shouldn't be doing that. Okay, so that was a nice learning experience for a student. You're walking around, I'm just playing like I'm in Chile, basically. This is what happens, you're supposed to free the prisoners, Anyway, so the students had a learning experience. They learned about, how to construct an exhibit, but I really needed their skills to actually implement many things. And exhibits are very, very, very tricky. Because you want people to learn from the exhibit, okay? So our South African exhibit, okay? The South African exhibit, we set up a maze with like chicken wire, a maze, basically, okay? Different paths on the maze. And when people came, they had to spin a wheel, okay? Spun a wheel, and where it landed, that's what they were. They were black, they were Afrikaner, they were British, whatever it may be. They became that, and that's the passport they got. They got that passport. And so the passport you got determined what part of the maze you could go through, basically. And there was a friendly part of the maze and a less friendly part of the maze, basically, okay? But at the end of the maze, okay, there was Nelson Mandela. So you were free. You were free at the end, basically. And we were very proud of that. And the students helped construct this whole thing. Very proud of it because we had representatives from the South African embassy here. And she said, we should do something like this. We should do something like this. So that was, okay. Another time we learned, we did Norway. We did Norway. And we set up a little street with little miniature houses, okay, and not houses, but with rooms and whatever, little miniature people in the house. Okay. And I like to be realistic. Okay. So I wanted to put barbed wire up. They didn't let me put the barbed wire up. Okay. But on the buildings, okay, based on what I wanted, it was down with the Jews on the buildings, because that's what Nazis are about. Well, we got some feedback from the community. They didn't quite like what they saw. Okay, but that's an important lesson as well for students. There are lines sometimes become difficult, how you present things, but you got to be truthful to history. You got to be truthful to history, basically. And learning about people, that particular exhibit, the Nazi exhibit from Norway, I remember a couple going through tattoos, long hair, leather jackets, just the kind of people I don't hang around, okay? And at the end of the exhibit, I said to them, thank you. And he said, no, we thank you for having this. In other words, my own stereotypes get challenged all the time. And I had a stereotype. And that was very helpful to me. That was very helpful to me, to be sort of waken up by someone who was different from me and who broke my stereotype of what he was about and she was about.
Several faculty that we've interviewed have talked about learning from their students, and you've spoken to that very eloquently. What I'd like to follow up with next is what I believe is the most recent phase of your career here, and this was developing a program for welcoming new Americans. Can you speak to how that evolved?
How that evolved. I'll talk about how I got involved in New Americans and refugees. And I'm specific with refugees, not immigrants, I'm refugees. And this goes back to MidFest to a certain degree, because one year we did the United Nations, and we had a meeting with some people in Columbus, and they said, well, there are many Somalis in this area. Maybe, you could have some of them come down, there's a dance group, there's an entertainment. So we made some contact with Somalis, and they were supposed to come up. We set up things with churches here and whatever. Well, they didn't show up. Okay, they didn't show up. So that was my first exposure to that. And then the following year, there was a Model UN event in Columbus. Okay, sort of a statewide Model UN. And there was a sort of a reception at the beginning. And there was a man sitting at a table, okay? And I went to sit next to him. And I said, hello, and I work at the university. He says, hello, and I work with refugees. So he was someone who had an organization that worked with job training, education. They weren't the resettlement organization. They were after the resettlement, basically. And so we became pretty close, actually. And so he encouraged me and helped me, and I met people, and I learned about Columbus, and I learned about Dayton as both welcoming communities, and tried to work with things on campus. So we brought down from Columbus one of the Lost Boys from Sudan, and Ball. And he told his story, and he had his paintings and artwork, did that, okay? We brought a photographer down who had taken pictures in the camps where Somalis were. And then one thing I guess the proudest of in some way was having on Women's History Month, Women's Journeys, Women's Voices, where we had female refugees come and in a group of roundtables tell their stories.
What countries?
And the countries that were represented, okay, there was one person who was stateless, okay? There was Rwanda, Burundi, former Yugoslavia, Iraq, let's see, former Yugoslavia twice, actually. Let's see what else I can think about. Those are the ones that come off the top of my head. And we did it one time, we did it 2 times. I hope that something continues after me. And I'm working with people in Cincinnati to help it expand. Okay, talking to people at the Freedom Center in Cincinnati because they like the concept. And so Freedom Center co-sponsored last year. They're going to co-sponsor this year. And hopefully we'll have an ongoing relationship with the Freedom Center and perhaps conduct certain events like this in Cincinnati if we're fortunate, basically. But actually meeting the people themselves, meeting the women themselves is really interesting. And the women, Bhutan was the other one. Bhutan was the other country. I was always sort of wondering, do they want to tell their stories? And they do want to tell their stories because they want people to understand, not just about them, but about the larger world and what is happening, basically. So this becomes something that is good for everyone. And I just want to thank the people at the university who supported it financially, okay, to provide support for paper, for snacks, whatever. The university has been wonderful. And that's been one of the great opportunities of being here. I have the greatest job, a great job, because I'm part of a department in Middletown, but also part of my department in Oxford. And I was connected in both ways with both places. And I have colleagues who are friends in Oxford, and I have colleagues who are friends here. The political science angle in Oxford, the multidisciplinary angle here, basically. And having colleagues who are, different disciplines has been very, very helpful. But also having the opportunity to take initiative and work with people. That's been one of the things that I've valued on campus, is that if you have an idea and you're willing to work with other people to make that idea happen, the support is there, basically. And I've been very, very, very lucky all along my career having that support, that opportunity to be creative and innovative in ways I could never imagine, and having the support from the faculty and the administration.
Several people have spoken about the connections among the faculty and the staff, and that it almost feels like a sense of family. Do you have any recollections of incidents that had that family feel?
So how about the relation between faculty and staff? Okay. Well, family feel, that's not what I recall. There was there, I'm sure, for people, the idea of family, whatever. But I take a little bit different angle on that, okay? They were wonderful colleagues. When I say they were wonderful colleagues, whether it's the mailroom, the bookstore, the library, grounds, maintenance, secretarial, they were always there. They were always there. And we knew each other. It wasn't some far-off office, some person who didn't know who you were. We knew each other. And the fact that we knew each other made an enormous difference. It made an enormous difference. So if I needed something from the library, needed some help from the library, we knew each other, basically. And that, or if I needed something, computer center, from the computer center was always, come help me. And they were there. And I think that the staff relation with staff were just superb and made an enormous difference. Made an enormous difference. And I hope they're appreciated. I try to tell them I appreciate them for what they've done all along the way. Admissions, counseling, advising. Everyone basically has been. Now, whether you want to call that family, I don't know. But just a wonderful, mutually supportive relationship. I think it's been great.
How have your teaching methods evolved with the campus over the years? What resources did you have at the beginning? Was there any new technology over time? You mentioned the IT team.
Yeah, so teaching. How teaching evolved over time. Yeah, there are certain things that made things, easier. The technology, you didn't have to use a Mimeo and whatever. You could look up. Yeah, I used to have, when I would teach comparative government, I would actually get newspapers from other countries. I'd call the embassy. They'd send me newspapers from South Africa, newspapers from the Gambia. I had stuff from the German Democratic Republic, Communist Germany. I had stuff from them that I would share with students. Okay, now I don't have to do that. You go online, you can get some of the same stuff online. So it makes it much easier, basically. Having video segments. I used to have to record my own stuff. And then, but now I can just go on and find it. If I'm looking for a presidential news conference, if I'm looking for C-SPAN's wonderful, if I'm looking for what happened, in the Million Man March, C-SPAN has a Million Man March, you just go pull it down, basically. So I think that technology has been very, very helpful, basically, okay? But you have to know, when using technology, you can't let technology control your teaching. You have to use your teaching to control the technology. Otherwise, you're showing a bunch of stuff. So I had to, you figure out ways to use the technology and not have the technology use you, basically. Becomes very important. For example, I guess I would teach a diversity class. And in the diversity class, what I started, in diversity class, these are complex issues and whatever, and and I would show people polls and do stuff and whatever. But then I thought, well, no, and it just happened because I had a really small enrollment one time, like really small, and I had to figure out what to do. So I did it differently. And when I did that differently, I used it after that for bigger classes. And this is what I did. Okay, we covered a couple topics in class. okay? And then I would say to students, okay, what topics you want to cover now? And we'd list topics, same-sex marriage, or race, or, gender equality, whatever it may be. We listed topics. Okay, so I said, let's order the topics. So they pick the first topic, second topic. I said, all right, now, let's figure out what questions you want to ask. What do you want to know? What questions you want to ask? So then they develop all these questions. Okay. We haven't used technology yet, okay? Use all these questions. I say, okay, let's answer the questions. And they pull out, I say, get your laptop or get your phone. Okay, question 1. Okay, let's find some, and then you look for an answer, you look for an answer, let's compare answers. And then what happens, you find that maybe some of those websites are not reliable, or the information's from 1982. So it's about using the technology to help determine different kinds of information, which is appropriate or not appropriate to answer questions. So I was never able to do that before, but that was really using the technology to help them develop skills, basically. So I like that. Okay, one other use of technology. Finally, I mentioned the Gambia. And when you teach about different countries in the world, students have never been to those countries. So I've been to the Gambia, and I have the connections in the Gambia. So what we did is that in class, we would set up a Skyping with Gambian students at the university. So I was able to have people there arrange it. So you'd have 10 or 12 Gambian students in my class, and they would be going back and forth on that. And inevitably, what would happen, it was fairly structured. I didn't have any surprise questions. The questions were known in advance. But after it was over, the students here would always say, boy, they know a lot. They're pretty smart. They know things, which breaks the stereotype right there, breaks the stereotype, okay? And what I was able to do was when I went to the Gambia, I could meet with some of the students that we had Skyped with. And they could express their joy and their appreciation for what we did, basically. Because what happened is that this was a situation where people were equals. There wasn't one superior or inferior, okay? They were equals, basically. And that's good for anybody, to be equal, basically, okay?
Did the university also support your scholarship?
Oh, yes. I got a semester off once. Spent it in Paris doing some research for a paper. They supported travel in some cases. Okay. The trip to Gambia was supported. Okay, by the university. Okay, but this is something I should have done. I never did. I never applied for sabbatical. I only had one semester off, in 30 years. I just never thought I've applied for a sabbatical. Don't ask me why. I have no idea why, okay? I just kept doing what I was doing. And I should have applied for sabbatical. Looking back, any regrets? That's the wrong regret, basically. Didn't apply for the sabbatical. And that's life, basically. But otherwise, the university was financial support, but also when it came to promotion and tenure, a lot of my scholarship was in pedagogy, teaching. And my department and the university said, yeah, this is okay. This is okay. In fact, I was probably one of the first people when I was hired who had it laid out in writing about the criteria for promotion and tenure. My chair at the time wanted to make sure that, teaching was first, service was second, scholarship third, and these types of things. So my chairs in Oxford were real advocates for me. And that's another part of the thing. It was wonderful. All of my chairs from the top, over every year, they were just very, very, very supportive. My colleagues were also very supportive. And so that was a good environment to be part of. Part of it might have been supported because my predecessor set the stage. My predecessor, Ray Fenning, was the first political scientist in Middletown. I'm the second political scientist in Middletown. Ray and I worked together. I mean, we kept, after I was hired, we'd have lunch together from time to time. I'd go to his place and whatever. So showing kind of campus this was, I hope it is, and the kind of person Ray Fenning was. Ray was a retired colonel in the military, very Republican, but a man who had clear values about right and wrong. And we had different political views, but we both agreed that there's a right and there's a wrong in respecting each other. And so he supported hiring me, of course. And Ray is now in his wife, they're in Arlington, okay? When I go to Arlington, I get to visit Ray, okay? But I was very, very, very privileged to have a predecessor who helped nurture me, basically. And say I was accepted, and well, I'll do whatever I need for you, Ray, Mel, okay? So Ray Fenning.
Are there any cases of students who most people would have given up on first meeting them?
Oh, I'm sure that there are, and there's always the sort of tension, you know, between treating students adults and letting them make their own mistakes, and understanding that they made the mistake, but they need help in getting by that mistake, and not just letting them by the wayside. And I've had students over the years, my own prejudices, when you look at some people, you go, well, and how you help people is very strange sometimes. I remember I was out doing some recycling for the whatever. And this woman came in to drop off some recycling, and she said, "I want to thank you." I said, "What?" She said, "You gave me a poor grade. That made me do better." And you don't know. You know, I really tried with the person. I talked with them, worked with them, but she still got a poor grade. And she said, "Now I'm doing better." Okay? So, and there are other cases sort of like that, okay? And you make these horrible judgments about people's lives. That giving them the chance, a little extra time sometimes, whatever it may be. And from the outside, it may look like you're biased towards certain kinds of people or certain groups. I've been accused of that. But I would do it for anybody, basically, okay? I would do it for anybody who I think has a chance. And some students took advantage of it and became so. Other people just didn't take advantage of it. And you can't save everybody, but you can help save some people and keep them in school, is what you can do. And I always wanted to keep people in school. And there was just last semester, the semester before last, you know, a guy didn't come to class, he got 2 poor grades, but he kept telling me he was trying, and I think he was. And so I worked out with the advising office, and we worked things out, okay? But it's tough to give up on someone. It's tough to give up on someone, and you don't want to give up on someone. And so I did my best not to, but sometimes it happens. Sometimes people, what can you say?
It seems like you're speaking to some kind of spirit and philosophy of teaching at this campus that may not just be unique to you. Is there something about the culture of teaching here that you hope will continue for the next 50 years?
Yes. First of all, you just said it. What's going to exist here, you know, in the culture of teaching for the next 50 years? Well, it's going to be a culture of teaching, period. And some places, there's not a culture of teaching. Okay, there is a culture of teaching here. We have, you know, the CTL, and we have the, you know, the opening workshops, But we also work with each other, talking to each other about the importance of teaching, okay? And the most important decision any university makes is the hiring decision. And we hire people who care about teaching. And that perpetuates that culture, basically. And I think that's important, and I think that which makes this place very, I won't say unique because I don't know other places as well, but makes it very special. And you know that what you're doing is valued, and what you're doing is important, and you have support from other people, basically. And I think it's while the top's important, it's the culture of teaching, to me, comes from the people at the bottom themselves, believing in it and wanting to do it, and going home and saying, I had a bad day. I had a bad day in class. I'm depressed today. It didn't go well. Oh, okay. But that never happened to me, of course. But you have those days. You have those days. And if you have those days, that means you care enough. You care enough. And you're not just blaming the students. You're not just blaming the students, because that's too easy to do. You don't blame the students. What did I do different? What can I do? What should I do? What happened today? And you go, that's what you do.
Is there anything else you would like to enter into the record for this interview?
No, except when I came, first time I saw campus, I thought, this is not where I'm going to be. And 30 years later, I was there. And I was just very privileged to do what I wanted to do in life and to get paid to do it with colleagues who were wonderful, and colleagues in staff, and colleagues in faculty, and colleagues in administration. I just was very, very lucky. And I'm very, very privileged. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have your permission to discontinue the recording?
You do.
Thank you very much.